left her fiancé, I did what people always say they would do for someone they love. I told her she could call me at any hour. I told her she did not have to explain herself before asking for help. I told her if she ever needed to get out of that apartment fast, even just for one night, my place was hers. At the time, it felt like the cleanest kind of promise. No speech. No heroics. Just a practical answer to a practical fear. Mara and I had been friends since our first year out of college, back when our lives still fit inside secondhand furniture and grocery budgets that could turn one bad week into a personality test. She was the kind of person strangers liked immediately. Fast, funny, warm in a way that made people feel chosen. When things were good, she could make a Tuesday feel like an occasion. When things were bad, she had a talent for making the room orbit the damage. Her breakup had been ugly in the banal, expensive way adult breakups usually are. Not dangerous in the cinematic sense. No shattered windshield. No screaming on the lawn. No police report to point at and say, "There, that was the moment it ended." It was uglier than that, in the quieter way. Months of mistrust. Petty monitoring. Messages checked over shoulders. Arguments that never fully landed because they kept dissolving into tears, apologies, promises, and then the same argument, wearing a different shirt 2 days later. When she finally packed a duffel bag and came to my place one Thursday night, she looked less dramatic than exhausted. Mascara half gone, hair tied up badly. Phone face down in her lap like it was still capable of hurting her. I made noodles because I did not know what else to do. I handed her one of my oldest t-shirts to sleep in. I changed the sheets in the guest room and put a glass of water on the nightstand the way people do in movies when they want to look more prepared than they feel. The next morning, before I left for work, I told her I had an extra key in the kitchen drawer. "Take it," I said, "just in case. If you ever need a place to breathe, use it." She looked at me with that wrecked, grateful face people make when they are receiving something small that feels bigger because of the week they are having. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I said. "Emergency use. No ceremony. Just text me if you come by." At the time, that sentence felt obvious. Text me if you come by. Not because I needed permission in my own home, but because adulthood works better when people narrate their entrances. For the first couple of weeks, she used the key exactly the way I meant it. Once, after a fight over shared furniture. Once, when she said she could not stand another night in the apartment while he was there pretending they were being civil. Once, on a Sunday afternoon, when she came over crying and slept in my guest room for 4 hours while I folded laundry and pretended not to notice how relieved she seemed to be, somewhere no one was asking her to decide her future. I never regretted helping her then. That part matters. People like to rewrite their own kindness after the fact so they can feel less foolish. I am not interested in that version. In the beginning, I meant every bit of it. The first odd thing happened on a Wednesday. I got home from work later than usual, shoulders knotted from an unnecessary meeting, and a train delay that smelled like wet coats and impatience. When I opened my apartment door, the lamp by the couch was on. I almost never left that lamp on. I am the sort of person who turns lights off while brushing my teeth. My mother calls it a Depression-era soul in a woman born 3 generations too late. So I noticed immediately. Nothing else looked wrong. No signs of forced entry, obviously. No drawers open, no missing electronics. Just a room with the soft, yellow glow of someone having been comfortable in it. There was a cereal bowl in the sink. Not mine. I live alone. I do not leave for work with clean counters and return to mystery dishes unless another person has passed through my life. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Mara. Sorry, I came by to decompress for a bit. Hope that's okay." There it was. Not before. After. I remember standing there with my bag still on my shoulder, staring at the message and arguing with myself in real time. She had been having a hard month. It was just a bowl. She had said sorry. Maybe I was being territorial. Maybe this was what helping actually looked like when it got inconvenient. I texted back, all good. Just let me know ahead next time if you can. She sent a heart emoji. That should have been the whole thing. A small correction. A small apology. A boundary repaired while it was still light enough to lift. Instead, it became a pattern. Some days I came home and could tell she had been there because the throw blanket was folded wrong. Some days it was a tea bag in the trash, or the faint citrus perfume she wore hanging in the hallway after the air should have settled. Once it was the indentation of someone else's body on my couch, and a streaming app paused halfway through a show I had never seen. Always a text after. Never before. Hope it's okay, needed quiet, just came for an hour. I was nearby and needed to breathe. Thank you for being my safe place. That phrase should have softened me. Your safe place. Instead, it began to feel like a title I had not applied for and could not easily resign from. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from being grateful someone trusts you and resentful that they keep proving it with your resources. I lived inside that contradiction for longer than I should have. Part of the problem was that nothing she did looked monstrous in isolation. She was not smashing furniture. She was not stealing jewelry. She was not holding parties in my living room. She was just there. Using, occupying, leaving behind evidence of comfort she had not paid for and had not properly asked to borrow. But homes are made of repetition. So are violations. Once she finished the last of a loaf I had bought that morning. Once she opened a jar of soup I had been saving for a week when I knew I would get home too tired to cook. Once she borrowed a sweater because the air conditioning made my place cold and returned it draped over a dining chair like we were sisters in a shared childhood bedroom instead of women in our late 20s with separate leases and different names on the mailbox. Every time I tried to tell myself I was lucky, the harm was small. Every time, the smallness made me feel pettier for noticing. That is how people overstay inside your boundaries, I think. Not always through force, sometimes through scale. They make the cost tiny enough that objecting feels mean, and then they repeat it until your own life starts feeling like something you have to negotiate access to. My friend Talia noticed before I said anything. We were making dinner at my place one Friday when she opened the fridge and frowned. "Didn't you buy those yogurts yesterday?" I did. There were 4. There were. She turned and looked at me. "Mara?" I shrugged in the careful way people shrug when they are already embarrassed by the answer. Talia closed the fridge with her hip. "This isn't an emergency key anymore." I laughed because I did not want the sentence to be true if I let it arrive at full weight. "She's having a rough time." "So are lots of people," Talia said. "Most of them do not grocery shop in other people's kitchens." I told her it wasn't like that. She asked what it was like. I had no clean answer. Because the truth was that Mara never behaved like a villain. That would have been easier. She behaved like someone who had made a series of quiet internal upgrades to her own status in my life and forgotten to mention them. In her mind, my apartment was no longer a place she could use in crisis. It had become a place she could access when her feelings were inconvenient. The moment I stopped being able to minimize it happened on a Monday evening. Work had been awful. Not dramatic, just the kind of draining where you spend 8 hours fielding requests from people who have mistaken your competence for endless capacity. By the time I got off the train, all I wanted was a shower, leftovers, and 45 minutes of silence before the world asked anything else from me. I unlocked my building door and heard laughter before I reached my floor. Not loud laughter. Not party laughter. Just the unmistakable texture of 2 people being at ease in a room that was supposed to be empty. For one confused second, I thought maybe it was coming from the apartment next door. Then I opened my own door. Mara was on my couch, and a man I had met once at a birthday dinner was in my kitchen pouring sparkling water into one of my glasses. They both looked at me with the guilty brightness of children caught pretending a house belongs to them. "There she is," Mara said, too cheerful by half. "We were just hanging out for a sec." I set my bag down very carefully because it was suddenly important to me not to throw anything. I knew the man's name was Evan. I knew he worked in marketing. I knew he was not her brother, not her landlord, not her therapist, and definitely not someone I had ever imagined would be standing inside my kitchen while I was still commuting home. "You brought someone here?" I asked. Mara blinked, as if the problem had not fully introduced itself to her until that exact sentence. "Oh," she said. "Is that weird?" There are moments when a relationship changes, not because of what happened, but because of how sincerely the other person fails to understand why it matters. That was one of them. Evan started gathering himself immediately, which I respected. People with decent instincts can smell when they have accidentally become part of someone else's boundary failure. "I can head out," he said. "Yes," I said, before I could sand the edge off it. He left with an apology that did not belong solely to him. The door shut. The apartment went still. Mara folded her legs under her and gave me a wounded look that would have worked on me a month earlier. "I didn't think it was a big deal." "It is a big deal. I'm not doing anything wrong. We just needed somewhere quiet to talk." "In my home," I said, "while I was at work. With your own key." She crossed her arms. "You offered this place to me." And there it was. The sentence underneath all the others. Not gratitude, not misunderstanding. Claim. I felt something settle inside me then. Not rage. Rage would have been easier to dramatize. It was more like the click of a lock aligning. "I offered you a place to land when you needed safety," I said. "I did not offer you open access to my apartment. I did not offer groceries, naps, guests, or a second social life in my living room." She looked genuinely offended. "You're making me sound like some user." "I'm describing what is happening." She stood up so fast the couch cushion exhaled under her. "I have been falling apart for months," she said. "You have no idea how hard this has been." That was the most effective argument available to her, and she knew it. Because it was true. She had been falling apart. It had been hard. The cruelty of moments like that is that one person's pain can be real, while their behavior is still unacceptable. I kept my voice low because I did not want this to become a volume contest. "I know it's been hard," I said. "That is why I helped you. But hard does not mean unlimited. Hard does not mean my home stops being mine." She started crying then. Angry tears more than broken ones. The kind meant partly for expression and partly for leverage. "So what? Now I need an appointment to see my best friend?" I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of the speed of the rewrite. In one sentence, she had taken us from "you brought a man into my apartment without asking to you or denying me emotional access." "No," I said. "You need an invitation to enter my apartment if I'm not here. And you need to text before you come over. Actually..." I stopped, looked at her hand, then at the hook by the door where I kept my keys. "No, I need my key back." The room changed when I said it, not because the words were loud, but because they were final. Mara stared at me as if I had slapped her. "You can't be serious." "I am. You're taking away the one place I feel safe." I remember that line because it would have undone me if I had heard it earlier in the month. But by then, I had already spent too many evenings stepping around proof that my kindness had become infrastructure for someone else's convenience. "You are safe," I said. "You are not entitled to my apartment." She reached into her bag with trembling, furious hands and dropped the key onto the entry table. it landed with the tiniest sound in the world. Such a small object, so much rearranged around it. Then she left. No slammed door. No final insult. Just a silence so deliberate, it felt curated. The aftermath was almost worse because it came disguised as moral concern. 2 mutual friends texted me the next day, asking what happened. One said Mara was devastated and felt abandoned. Another said, maybe I could have handled it more gently considering everything she'd been through. That phrasing irritated me in a way I could not explain for several hours. More gently. As if the problem had been my tone, and not the months of unauthorized access that made tone necessary. I typed and deleted at least 6 responses before I finally sent the truth. I told them I had given Mara a key for emergencies after the breakup. I told them she had started using it while I was at work without telling me first. I told them she ate food, slept there casually, and brought another person over without permission. I told them I had asked for one basic courtesy more than once. I told them I took the key back when it became clear we were living inside 2 different definitions of help. One friend never replied. The other sent, "Wow, I didn't realize it had gotten like that." Exactly. That was the whole story. Most people think boundaries are announced dramatically at the first offense. Often they aren't. Often what actually happens is quieter and more embarrassing. You keep trying to be generous because the other person is hurting. You keep downgrading your own discomfort because nothing looks dramatic enough to justify a scene. And by the time you finally speak clearly, bystanders only see the moment of refusal. They did not live through the 100 small permissions that made refusal necessary. Mara did not speak to me for 3 weeks. Then she sent one message. "I know you think I took advantage, but I thought you cared about me more than rules." I stared at that sentence for a long time. It was so revealing I almost had to admire it, because that is the bargain some people unconsciously offer when they are used to being emotionally accommodated. If you love me, your boundaries should feel to me like technicalities. I never answered the message. Not because I wanted the last word. Because I finally understood that any reply would be treated as negotiation, and there was nothing left to negotiate. The strangest part was how quickly my apartment felt like mine again. Within a week, the air changed. No mystery dishes, no shifted blankets, no little signs of someone else having exhaled inside my day without asking. I came home and found exactly what I had left, which is a form of peace so ordinary you do not realize how sacred it is until it returns. I kept the spare key in my kitchen drawer for a while after that, not because I planned to give it back to Mara, because I wanted to look at it long enough to remember what it had really represented. Not metal, not access, trust. And trust is strange that way. People think it breaks with the obvious betrayals, the spectacular ones, the lies, the thefts, the cruel declarations. But some of the deepest fractures come from smaller things. From the person who keeps treating your yes as if it included 10 other yeses you never said. From the person who receives shelter and begins furnishing themselves inside it. From the person who hears, "If you need me," and quietly translates it into, "What's yours can be mine whenever I'm uncomfortable." I still do not think helping her was a mistake. I think failing to end the arrangement sooner was. There is a difference. Compassion is not proved by how long you let yourself be inconvenienced. Love is not measured by how completely someone can occupy your resources before you object. And being a safe place for someone should never require becoming a place where you no longer feel fully at home yourself. That was the lesson the key taught me. Not that people in pain are selfish, not that generosity is naive, only that mercy without edges stops being mercy very quickly. It becomes unpaid rent in the language of friendship.
Thank you for watching. If this story pulled you in, do me one favor. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so the next one finds you the moment it drops. Remember, nothing is ever just what it seems. See you on the next one.